Welcome back, everyone. It's the Bourbon Judge. We are back at it, ready to have a little bit of fun with Middle West Spirits. All right. So I reviewed Middle West Spirits before on the channel, but a couple of my patrons actually reached out to me. We were talking about our barrel pick. So the Middle West Spirits, our barrel pick came out a few months ago. This is the Pumpernickel Rye Whiskey, dark Pumpernickel Rye Whiskey, I should say rather. It sold out like in a day, maybe a day and a half, I forget exactly, but it sold out quickly. Our patron community flat out loved it. I loved it myself. But there was a question that came up that said, Judge, you know, obviously this is the dark Pumpernickel, but I also see once in a while this one in the box. What's the difference, right? So that was like, you know, let's go ahead and just do a full episode so we can kind of explain the similarities, differences, and so forth. Cool? All right. So let's talk a little bit about Middle West Spirits. First and foremost, Middle West Spirits is a craft distillery based in Columbus, Ohio. Me personally, and my patrons know this, I'm a huge fan of craft distilleries across the U.S. I love the fact that there's so many different, like, smaller craft distilleries making and distilling their own whiskey, aging it, creating it, just, you know, putting in their love, sweat, blood, sweat, and tears into making some fantastic whiskey. And then when I think of Ohio, obviously Ohio has a large number of craft distilleries, and even in Columbus, there's a few different ones. But for me personally, the one that I personally love the most in Columbus, Ohio, is Middle West Spirits. So again, Middle West Spirits, they make obviously some bourbons, but in my opinion, when I look at like their bourbons or their ryes, I personally prefer their ryes. And in particular, this bad boy here. So this is my barrel pick, but they have obviously other ones out there, other single barrels as well. But this is their straight rye whiskey, and this is a dark Pumpernickel rye whiskey. So what I love about it, number one, look at that color. Look how dark that dark Pumpernickel rye is, right? So number one, you get that color. Number two, what I love about the dark Pumpernickel rye is the fact that it's a little bit sweeter. So when you think of like a rye whiskey, most times you typically think of like either like a mint note, a floral note, or just very spicy and so forth. What I love about the dark Pumpernickel rye, it somehow creates like some type of like a extra level of like sweetness. There's a little bit of an extra, like almost like a sugar kind of a note to it. So for me, I've always loved the dark Pumpernickel rye because it's almost like it's like a bourbon drinker's rye, right? It still has the fundamental core elements of a rye whiskey. However, it has a little bit of the sweetness of a traditional bourbon. So when a lot of bourbon drinkers are like, hey, should I make the leap of faith and try a rye whiskey? Yes, you should, number one. Number two, you can try different brands. Like obviously Pikesville is probably like the best bourbon drinker's rye whiskey out there. But if you're looking for something a little bit different, dark Pumpernickel rye whiskey, absolutely amazing whiskey. It really is. All right, now we start to get a little bit into the topic I had earlier with one of my patrons. It was like, well, what's the difference, Judge, of your dark Pumpernickel rye whiskey versus the one that is actually in the like, you know, in the little container, different bottle design and so forth. All right, so kind of going back a little bit, I had this for a while and I heard about this one, but I was like, I wonder how good it is. So even though myself, I'm a whiskey tuber, I watch all other whiskey tubers out there, the majority for the most part. And my good friend, my buddy Jason C from Mass and Drum, this was his number one whiskey, I think either like 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, a couple years ago. I was like, well, damn, if Jason loves it, I gotta try a pour of it. So I went out to Ohio and I was actually hanging out with cousin Nita. We went to a local bar and I was like, damn, that is flat out amazing. So Jason C was absolutely right. And I fell in love with this bottle. I really did. All right. So what is the difference? So essentially this bottle here, it is at the core, it is this. It's the dark Pumpernickel rye whiskey. However, like it says here on the front, a couple things. It's then finished in French tawny port cask, and that French tawny port cask, as it says here on the front of the box, it brings out like stone fruits, nutmeg, and almost like a very like a spicy kind of a rye kind of a note as a whole, right? So it brings out like those fruity kind of a notes. So if you are a fan of a finished rye whiskey, you will absolutely love this dark Pumpernickel rye whiskey that is then finished in a French tawny port cask. The second key difference is the age. Where most of these are aged around like 4 years and a couple months. These are always age dated, as it says here on the front, age 5 years. So the minimum age is at least 5 years of this whiskey. We don't know exactly how long it stays in that French tawny port cask, but it is in there for at least probably 30 days, maybe 60 days or so. That's on average from most distilleries when they finish it in a port, if you will. And then the other key difference from a price standpoint. So when you think of the price of the standard dark pumpernickel rye whiskey, you normally will find these about $75, $85 on average as a whole for the regular dark pumpernickel rye whiskey. But if you're looking for the tawny port finish, aged 5 years, definitely a little bit more. These are about $110, $115. What's pretty cool is, honestly, a few years ago when I first heard of this, right, this version, you could only find them for the most part in Ohio. But now they're popping up all over. So you can find them in Ohio. You can find them online. Like I know Sealbox had them. I think Shared Pour may have had them at one point as well. This bottle here I got actually from one of my patrons, my buddy Terrence, who lives in the state of Pennsylvania. They were online in Pennsylvania, and Terrence was like, "Hey Judge, should I really buy one of these?" And I was like, yes, you should buy one. And no offense, if you can go ahead and help the judge out, buy a second one for me. So Terrence is cool enough, my man. He bought a second bottle, and obviously hit him some cash on PayPal, and he got the second bottle for me. That just goes to show you that, number one, the distribution of this specialized version of it, the port finish, is definitely growing. So it used to be available only in Ohio. Now it's available in multiple states as well as online. So when I say Middle West Spirits is producing some fantastic whiskey, their standard dark pumpernickel rye whiskey, cask strength, but then also the cask strength version of the ported version as well, folks, the proof is in the whiskey. It really is. It's fantastic whiskey. I've already went ahead and poured some. Look at that. Oh my gosh. Oh, let me get into the nose. Ah, man. All of those fruit notes just kind of jump out at you. Ah, the plum, blackberries. Almost like some strawberry notes, but more plum, blackberry-ish. Oh my gosh. Some grapes. Hey, real quick, 3 quick easy favors. Number 1, hit the like button. Number 2, drop me a comment. Let me know, what are your thoughts? Have you ever tried the ported pumpernickel, dark pumpernickel rye whiskey from Middle West Spirits? Last but not least, please make sure you all subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you get notification each and every time I release new content. Cool? All right, here we go. Cheers. Woo! Damn, this is delicious. So when the judge says, this is some good whiskey, don't hesitate to buy it, I always will stand by my word. Until the next time, my friends, peace, cheers, most important, salute. Take care.